Hey, how you doing? Today we have another code conversation. We're going to be talking to Ryan, and Ryan made Solid, and Solid is another JavaScript framework for rendering out components. So I want to give it to you, Ryan. Like, what is Solid?
Yeah, as you said, it's a JavaScript framework. It is a reactive JavaScript framework that is built on JSX and reactive primitives. It's sort of like, to some people, when they look at it, they'll kind of see maybe something like MobX with React, but we've actually taken the reactivity right down to the binding level, which I hope to show you today. How about I share my screen actually? Okay, I've just loaded up the Solid Playground, which is a REPL we have, so we can try this stuff online.
Yeah, so seeing this for the first time, it looks a lot like React. There at the top, you see like a create signal and a count and set count. This looks very similar to a use state that you would see, and then there's an increment function, but there's no use callback in there. And then if you look in where it's rendering, the count is called as a function, so it's not just being used as a value; it's being called as a function. So there's something definitely different about this. Like, why it's not it's most likely not that we're just calling a function, but that there's a little bit more going on.
Yeah, yeah. What you're seeing here is the reactive system, and that's basically like create signal, as you noted, is our core primitive, very much like useState is in React. The biggest difference is that it returns a function, and the reason it has to be a getter is because in Solid we need to know where values are tracked. So we're very conscious of where we access the values, and calling a function or using a member access like on like a object getter or proxy lets us know how values are used automatically. This can save us from doing manual dependency arrays, which we'll see a bit later. But in general, though, this you can just start with this very React looking thing, with an update function, and just acknowledge that you're calling this as a function, and then you can just it does what you expect. We click the button, it calls the set count and gets the new count in here.
So what
I,
you were saying is like one of the purposes of this is that you can get rid of all of that second argument that goes into most of the hooks, where it has a big array of dependencies. You're saying this concept allows you to get rid of that.
Yeah, yeah. That's one of the primary things in terms of ease of use, but it goes a little bit further than that because we really want to be able to do the absolute least amount of work on any kind of update or change, right? And I mean, I can illustrate this pretty simply here. Like, so far, we're in React land with a funny syntax, but if I was to kind of go in here and go like, I'm alive, if I'm you can see the thing
Yeah.
coming in, but we have I'm alive now. This, we mounted our counter component, and it says I'm alive. When I click this button, the button's updating, but I am not spitting out that counter again.
So what you expect to see here when that happens is that you get "I'm alive" logged in the console every single time you click, because in React what happens is that it recalls your function again, the component itself, and it will run through all of the lines of code and then return your render. And so that's how you're typically seeing this. So in this case, you're just logging it, and I'm expecting that you've got something kind of like Svelte where it compiles behind the scenes to allow you to have that reactivity. And there's a lot going on that is like not clear just from looking at it.
That is true. Although I will say Solid's approach is a little bit hybrid, which is kind of beneficial. I'm going to switch over to the output tab so you can see. But the biggest thing here is how minimal that changes, right? You're going to see some new imports come in, and that's just because the compiler automatically understands which features you use and only
Mm.
imports those. But if we look at our counter component for a second, and you look at the first three lines here, it's the same code that you wrote. We don't actually change it. This is a runtime reactive system, right? It's only when we get into JSX that this happens, and it's important to understand. This is why we have those functions, right? That you saw. This is why count is a function, because you know I take a template. It looks like normal JSX, and I actually split it from the static and dynamic parts. So the button here, I actually, if you look on line 4 up here, I actually hoist out the static HTML. And this is important because it doesn't matter how big that block of JSX is, we can basically create it in a one shot super efficiently by just cloning the HTML elements. And we only do that once. Everything here just gets set up once. We added our click handler. This, don't worry too much about the syntax. It's for event delegation. Um, but this insert statement is really where the work is happening, where that update is happening. And this is a helper that got pulled in from Solid, but you can basically view it as a use effect, basically in React or CreateEffect in Solid. The idea is that our rendering is just a side effect of the reactive system. So, I'm going to take this count here, and if I said, like, let's make it count times 2, right? You see now how it's wrapped in the function. The reason this was just count before is because count itself was a function, so I knew that it was passing a function in. But now that we wrap this expression in a function, we can, ensure that only, this function re-executes. The rest of this does not re-execute again. Insert is just smart enough that goes, hey, when count changes, change the content of this DOM element.
Yeah. So this is kind of like it's automatically putting that second argument in there that typical React hooks would have. You're doing it behind the scenes at compile time because it's you're able to determine that based on the fact that you've got all these curly braces in your HTML on the left. So where you've got those curly braces, you're able to strip that out of the string, and that's why you had the HTML template at the top. You're able to strip those out, get rid of any extra attributes that were also using the JavaScript in them, and then down in your return statement, now you're returning a function to Solid, and then in that function you're able to put the stuff that you stripped out of those curly braces in the HTML and put them here and do something with them, because every time you get them, like, oh, these curly braces are in an attribute, so I have to do this to it. And I also notice here clone node is here. Is clone node is this like the actual document? Okay. Yep. So that's a DOM element right there, and then we're inserting, that's your function call that basically says on this DOM element I need to put this text in there by calling this function when an update occurs. Yeah, so the render, so normally what would be called in React is the entire component, but in this case, the component is called once, but that returns function, that's actually what gets called over and over again. Is that what you're saying? It's like a hybrid?
Yeah, well, it's this insert function, this little thing in here, the function with the count times 2. This whole thing actually isn't returning a function. It's an iffy, or like it's a self-executing.
I see.
The reason is it's easier. Like JSX is an expression mostly, but because I convert it into multiple statements, it's just easier and within scope to just I use Babel actually, and it just gets converted this way so that I can keep it like in the scope block, and it'll just run like this.
So I'm curious, what happens if there's an error in this code?
Yeah, so it's JavaScript. Like if we mess something up, like let's say we called it num instead of count, we're just gonna get the typical error like. Where am I? Sorry, this is probably
that's from last time we did this.
Yes.
A little behind the scenes there.
Yeah, why is it not giving me my undefined error here? Sometimes these online editors aren't good. I mean, part of this, you've seen the unline. It knows there's an error because we're using TypeScript here. We get full tooling support here through TypeScript simply from the fact that yeah, it looks like the playground's pressing error right now, but we're getting full.
Well, so last time we did this, which was about where we stopped, it showed the num is not defined error in the console, which is what you would expect to see when you do that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, try refreshing it.
Oh, there it is. Go.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I mean, this is just JavaScript. Like, as you can see from the compiled output, there's nothing terribly fancy going on. We keep your JavaScript scope. It isn't the standard JSX transformation, but all it is a JSX transformation. The main reason that I can't use the standard transformation, obviously, is because I want to hoist the static parts off. Because most of the time with JSX, it just runs like a top-down bunch of functions. It's like create element, create element, create element, create element. I only want to create what I want to create. So that's basically the biggest reason for that change. And I mean, if it helps kind of visualize this any better here, what we're kind of doing is, I'm going to take this console log for a second, and I'm just going to go CreateEffect. Like, this might look a little bit like React use effect, and there's some similarities there, but I've got to clear all the extra stuff, and I did not import it yet. So let's create effect. Um, Basically, nothing's reactive here, so it's still only running once. But if we were like, I'm alive count, now,
Uh-huh. So that's
right?
showing us that basically, so for people that don't know, console log can take multiple arguments. Each argument is separated by space when it gets output. So there's nothing special he's doing there. But then what he did do is he put a create effect around and a function around the console log, and that says that every time the component re-renders, that is now part of the re-render that occurs.
Yeah. So I mean,
Does it
conceptually,
know that count changed, or does it just call that anytime?
no, count changed. What I did originally, I guess I didn't show call. If I got rid of count
Uh
here,
huh.
this will only ever run once. Let's clear again. Yeah, I
Ah,
mean,
so yeah, it's not being logged. Okay, so it's seeing what's already in the function and automatically creating the second arg essentially from React standpoint. It's creating the dependency array after it sees there's a count in there. Now I need to refresh. That's really cool that it does that for you.
yeah, it's basically, but that's not even compiler. That's all. This is all that portion is runtime. Remember, I showed you
Uh
we
huh.
don't actually change your code for the create effect. Let's move this a little bit. Like we do a form of runtime tracking, which is the same trick that MobX and Vue does. So it's all about function scope. It's all about execution scope. We basically go start listening, run it. Whenever something calls or gets read, it goes, oh, I'm listening to this. And then in the future, if anything that it listens to changes, it goes, just rerun me.
Mm.
So
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. So
uh,
the create effect, this is you're doing something like hooks with create effect because I'm noticing it gets called with your component on the first render, and then something must be checking that hey this got called, and then listening for did a create effect function also get called after I started this component, and if it did before I got a return value, then like mark it and store it somewhere along with your component.
well, that's the thing. It's actually not with the component, and this is the part that's kind of mind blowing for people kind of coming in from React. This component, this function you see, is all this component ever does. Our
Mhm.
components don't really have any weight to them. They don't own their state. What's actually happening is, and this is really, I mean, I don't know if this will demo particularly well, but let me give this a shot here because I'm gonna do it here. What's actually happening is that there's no
Mm.
hook.
Oh, okay. This is something you can't do with hooks because with hooks you
Yeah,
can't put like
but what
conditions or anything. Uh huh.
and I can't really showcase this without doing multiple, but essentially, look, I'm alive,
Oh. Uh huh. So
and
just still put the code in there directly.
I mean, this is going to still work anyway, but basically, you can view our whole render tree as a bunch of reactive scopes. There only needs to be enough scope when there's a condition, when there's something branching, and basically starting from the top when there's render, we basically collect all the state, all these signals, they're owned by that. So at the beginning of your app, they're owned by render, all the way down to you hit that first conditional, so that first kind of nested um, thing that happens, and then they're owned by that context. So basically, it can onion
Ah.
all the way down, so that eventually what happens is like we do have an on cleanup, so to speak. So and I can show this kind of here on cleanup.
And this is a callback? Yeah.
Yeah, basically in React, you return a function in your effects. The reason I have an explicit API is because you can really on cleanup almost anywhere in Solid. And let's go console log.
Done.
I'm done. Yeah, exactly. Right. And I'll show you, a small little thing here. So we're live, but the thing is, like React, this cleanup registers every time. So I'm done.
Uh-huh.
See, right?
Every
And
time because count is in there, and so it's calling that based on when count. So if you don't put the count in there, then it would never it would only log the I'm done when the component completely unmounts.
right. But to give you like even more kind of context on this, I'm going to move the cleanup out of here. And if you can picture in this case, I mean, I
Yeah, because
guess
count is in the scope of the inner CreateEffect and not
that's
the outer CreateEffect. So
exactly.
the
It's
cleanup
not
is
going
only when we're going to run when the component unmounts still, because yeah, okay, I get what's going on. So basically we have this is just regular React function scoping. So what's really key here is knowing what CreateEffect is doing. So somehow CreateEffect is looking at the contents of the function that's returned to it, and it's somehow able to determine what's inside that function, and then we'll listen to whatever's in there, and then we'll run an on cleanup function that is also inside there, provided it was in there. And yeah, let's see if you want to show source code. Let's check this out.
Yeah,
I'm
okay. You
so
want me to do
curious.
that? I can do a little bit. Source code is still really complicated. Solid's hyper how should I put it? Hyper optimized. But this is a topic that I am definitely well versed in, and I've been training and teaching people on it. So I created this nice article, and actually for your case, it's not going to be this one. So it's building a reactive library from scratch. I'm going to make a very simple version. We're going to see what a very simple, we can see what a very simple version of something like Solid would look like, just so you can kind of grok what the code is. Because you saw my create signal, right? If create signal did nothing else special, and I might be using a little bit of fancy syntax here a little bit, but all it is a read function and a write function. The read
This is
function
use state. For anybody in React, this is a use state function.
exactly, except that ours returns a function that returns the value.
Yes.
Otherwise, it's just a setter that sets the value. And you can make that code, and that code does it. Like, here's an example where I was like console logging, setting the new account, console logging. It's pretty obvious what it's going to do, right? It just sets the new value like you might expect, right? You just kind of return the value, set the value. But the problem is subscriptions. I hope this is big enough that people can see.
Yeah, it's pretty big.
What actually happens in a reactive system is we have subscriptions. So you can pretend that behind the scenes, inside the signal, there's actually an array of or a set of subscriptions. And when we read, we don't only return the value, we actually look for this global context. You can picture something kind of like a stack sitting outside of the whole thing. And basically what happens is we look at the stack. We go, what's on top of the stack? If there's something on top of the stack that, as you saw, we have those nested effects. If we're running right now and we're in that innermost effect, there's a couple things on that stack, call this subscribe function on that running thing. All the subscribe did.
Oh, I think I get it now. Okay, let me see if I can understand this. So when you create a signal before, we had the count, and the count was a function. So when that function gets called, or when the value gets updated in the right function of count, so some setter for count, what that's doing is this CreateEffect function had that now in scope, and so there's like a single context that all of these are referring to. And
Yes.
when that updates in any of them, it somehow knows. I still don't get how it knows, but the
Yes.
point is that basically that write function is key, because that write function goes to a context, and that context is available to all of the things within that context. Because you said there's the root context, and then as you add more of these, there become subcontexts as you go along.
Exactly. And the thing is, maybe it's easier to start with the right side, because the right
Yeah,
side makes
that's the easier one, definitely.
because you set the new value and then you look at your subscriptions and you notify them all. You just go rerun. So you could pretend that this list of subscriptions is a list of all the effects.
Mm-hmm.
So basically you write the new value and go, hey, subscription, I've updated. And it just reruns all of the effects.
Okay, so let me try to understand this. So subscriptions, we're making a new array of it. That's like your second arg. We're looping through those, and we're executing each subscription. So this is like in a observable model, this would be calling a subscribe on it. And so we're basically executing every single function that listens to anything that was updated.
Well, yeah, well, it listens to specifically this signal.
Yeah, so
right?
this is the write function. So this is what would happen when you set a value in the count.
It notifies.
It knows which subscribers it has, because when you do the read operation, it's subscribing all of those subscribers. Okay, so the first time through, it then subscribes to it. So you have to so your component runs once, and then when it runs that first time, it's calling all the CreateEffects. That's also telling it which read functions exist. Because it's getting the initial values, and then those are being stored in this context This not like a React context, but similar. And then the write function is going to refer to that context and call all of the subscriber, all of the essentially the create effects that it knows about because those are relative to its context.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is I didn't show you the other half of the
Okay,
equation.
cool. So we got the yeah. So it also runs some lifecycle methods as well. So it runs cleanup on execute. Okay, so that's interesting. Uh,
Yeah,
the cleanup happens first. Is there something I'm missing here?
yeah, no, that's the whole thing. It's the last cleanup that
Oh,
happens.
we're creating an execute function. Okay, hang
Yeah,
on.
sorry.
So
It,
running.
it gets run at the end here.
Okay, it gets run at the end, and then it calls cleanup. So it must. So I'm missing something, but it actually calls a function, and then it calls cleanup, and then all this like cleanup, these actual like internal cleanup happens with the context push and all that.
Yeah. So okay, what ends
Right?
up
Or am I
happening?
missing something? Because it looks like cleanup gets called first, and then you
It
call the
does get
function.
called first, but that's because it has to clean up the previous execution. Like
Oh,
we
interesting.
run cleanup when it
Yes,
finally gets
yes.
released, or right before it gets re-executed.
Yeah, so just like in React, what happens if you have a use effect and you return a function from a use effect, it calls that function only when a value has changed, and then it calls your use effect again. So that's what's
Yes.
happening here. So this is the return. The cleanup is the return function from a use effect, and then the
Yeah.
fn down there is the function that you have passed in your create effect that's going to get called again. And so if your component unmounts, the cleanup will get called, but then we won't call the function because it won't exist. That's why it's a try catch here, and then it will pop that out of the context no matter what and clean up. I'm assuming at some point it's going to the reason you're popping out of the context is to free up memory because you don't want stuff sitting in memory getting called for things that don't
and
exist.
and the truth of the matter, yeah, there's just no point keeping them all there because like this is each individual effect has its own context. So like
Mm-hmm.
there's a bunch of siblings, there's the nested and the siblings. In actual Solid, we don't actually use a stack. It's just like get the previous and resume it, but it's just easier to visualize this as a stack. But basically, once we're done, this context shouldn't be tracking anymore. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's only when you push that if we go back to our signal here, that it can find it to subscribe. You don't if you kept it there and it was the topmost one, you'd be subscribing to everything.
Uh-huh.
So it needs to like go listen to me while I'm executing, like listen while I'm executing, and then get out. Yeah.
Listen while I'm yeah, that's why the running is there. So you're saying you want a state that determines if it's listening to that. No, yeah, so this running is supposed to be it's a boolean, it looks like. And
Oh, the running actually is just
oh, it's
bad.
an object. Oh, I see. And
I'm just saying this is the computation. This is the effect. I
uh-huh.
just called it running because it was like get me the current one that's running. The naming might be a little
Oh, I see.
confusing.
You're getting the thing itself.
Yeah,
But you wouldn't
exactly.
call execute from the cleanup function, would you? Or you're doing it internally.
No, no, I don't call the execute from the cleanup function. The signal calls the execute function.
Oh, there it is. Okay, I see it now. Okay.
When you write to, a new signal, it executes the whole list again.
Yeah, yeah. I think I'm missing something there, but I don't think it's as important. I think that getting the grip. I realize now that I was like completely not understanding that. But the important piece is that there's a write function, there's a read function. The write function, the way it knows magically is not by string parsing, which is actually really cool. I didn't think about this, but the read function adds to a global. It's not a global context, but is a local context up to the parent that last created the context. and
Yeah.
and so that it's just like React at that point. When you wrap a component in a context, it goes up to the parent until it reaches that a provider. And so this is a provider essentially. Each create signal is not a provider, but it looks up to a provider eventually. So there is some
Yeah.
provider. So what counts as a context provider for state in Solid?
Basically, any wrapping computation, basically the effects are
Effects.
essentially.
Okay. So an effect will create a new context. So let's see. We wrap that effect. We wrap that effect in another effect. And the good thing here is that you can put. Can you put like if else's in here?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really.
Like
Let's.
I
Do
don't
I
know
have
why
a
you'd
good?
want to do that, but like if this is happening, then create the effect. I don't think we can do that because that gets run once when the component is created.
Well, yes. If you wrap the effect outside of the effect, but I mean, that's like hook rules territory, right?
Yeah. So it still has to follow the rules of hooks.
Well, not it depends. Like basically, if you never create it, you never create it, right? Like
Uh-huh.
I mean, I don't. You can have nested. Like we don't complain at you from doing nested. You could choose not to create that effect, if that makes any sense. Like you just have to. If you're in the mental model of run once, it makes a reasonable amount of sense. What I wanted to show
I see
you.
what you're saying. So you can create effects and remove effects and create them and remove. Well, the thing is, if you're creating and removing it, it won't know because the component hasn't unmounted. It wouldn't know to get rid of it. That's my thinking. And this is maybe too complex at this point that we're getting deep. But I'm curious, like more for my own knowledge, is kind of like how this is working behind the scenes and what can break it. If rules like for instance, if you don't follow the rules of hooks, what could break? That's what I'm
Right.
thinking.
Yeah, I mean, mostly it's not, how should I put it? Like hooks have the rules for a really good reason, right? And it's part of the abstraction they built. Here, we don't have the hook rules because it's just all a matter of layering context. But like if you do something top level in a component, and we make our components are never tracked. Just a side note, this isn't to stop weird like unintentional side effects. But if you put something top level in the component, since it only runs once, like it'll never run again, right?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
so that's I guess the catch or the gotcha. But on the other hand, it's also not some arbitrary rule. It's not like, oh, I need
Oh,
to,
uh-huh.
like I don't. It's not like I
You're
need to
saying for
use.
server side, for instance, let's say like you could just not have the use effect in there, and it would
Yes.
run just fine. Like that's a reason why you might. I'm trying to think in my head why you might not do it. And if you compile for client and server side, that would be a reason. Maybe you don't want something to render, and you do want it to render in a different
On
environment.
it, I think parts of the hook rules, at least the top level conditional things, make a lot of sense. I mean, they were okay with that trade off because when do you actually want to conditionally include a hook?
Mm-hmm.
Like
It just seems like a weird. Yeah, there's usually no reason because it will cause errors. Like if you put a condition around a create signal, like your code's gonna break. I mean, the variable doesn't even exist now in the scope that you need it.
right. Like
Yeah.
you could. There might be some. The only example I can think of is if you have a component that's used different ways in different locations, and you want to be
Mm-hmm.
like, I want to configure it so it works this way in this location and this way in this location. But the conscious of the configuration is not something that changes. It's just like this this is how it works here, and this is how it works here. Here it does the side effect. Here it does not do that side effect.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like that's the gist of it. What I was going to say is though, stuff like conditionals don't even break stuff down. Like if you look at this memo
Uh-huh.
here, I kind of this is
Oh, I see. I see. You're saying conditions in like a create effect or a create memo. Those are
yeah,
fine. Yeah,
yeah,
which what I would expect to see. Uh-huh.
right. Obviously, but this has implications, and I just wanted to show this. This is hopefully the most advanced example I'm going to give here on the reactivity part. But we've got a few signals, right? We got our name, last name, and then show full name, right? And
Mm-hmm.
what I like about this example, this is like the final distinctive piece to understand just how little work Solid can do. Is if we made a display name here, and we said, only return the first name when you're not showing the full name, otherwise return the full name, right?
Uh-huh.
And I did this one with effects rather than JSX because this is just a general reactivity kind of lesson. But you can see that if you go here and you go console log, my name is display name, we where is it? We log our create one.
Okay, so let me try to figure this out. So and that'll help like go through it step by step. So the show full name is set to true by default. So not show full name would be true, or no, false. And so we would hit the second line. So we'll show the first name and the last name,
Yeah,
which would be John Smith.
yeah,
Okay, so we're seeing John Smith. Okay, yeah, we see John Smith. Okay, and so that is the first time it gets called. Now the second time, it says set show full name to false. Now that's gonna recall your use memo or create memo. Sorry, that's gonna call the create memo again, and just
yeah,
that, nothing else is gonna get called. And then it should return a value, but it's not logging it yet, right? Because
yeah.
that create effect is going to run when that display name changes as well.
Yes, it's going to read the memo. Yeah,
Okay, so it's gonna see that display name changed because it got a new value, and it's going to then so then that's gonna show just the first name because we set it to
yeah,
false.
yeah.
And then the says set last name to legend, so that will update last name, but we're still only showing the first name here, so nothing will happen.
Well, what technically will
Yeah, we got
happen.
nothing. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Because we're not listening to last name
Okay,
anymore.
and then set show full name to true. Now the last name should show up, the new last name with the first name. and we got John Legend. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just like React from that standpoint, but it's just like completely different. It's not the same. They're just similar concepts. The
yeah.
cool part about having similar concepts, like Svelte, is like completely different from React. I would say it's got some similarities, but it's mostly different. I would say, especially with the mutations and some stuff going on behind the scenes. This is less magic and more like very clear about what's happening. And from what we saw in the code, the only magic that's happening is on the JSX parsing. That's the only magic that's happening, but that's the same in React.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying here is that it's like you said, it's like Mombex or something else. It's reactive, but you don't have to be concerned about how it's reactive. It's kind of like Knockout was like that too, where it was reactive, but you didn't have to know which variable you were passing in and like put a second arg. It would just do it for you. But they were string parsing, I think, and that's how they got it. You're able to do it based on the context of what's called.
The knockout was actually based on this too. Honestly,
Oh, okay.
this genre of reactivity actually there's been Mobex made some huge improvements in terms of batching and scheduling, in terms of ensuring that like things only ran once. But the core mechanisms that I've been showing today and the context-based, reactivity has been there since like Knockout or since the beginning.
Okay,
Um,
interesting. So this isn't anything new necessarily. You just gave a React spin on what
right.
is really the tried and true like nice technology.
Yeah, and the reason for this is like yeah, we're done with this demo. Sorry, I was gonna say that it was cool is that React we'd always have to rerun this
Yeah,
stuff,
yeah,
but
yeah.
yeah, but what the reason that this is so the difference here, yeah, I guess you're right. It is like those old libraries, but since React came out, every reactive library has basically been component modeled, essentially.
Uh-huh,
Like
uh-huh. Yeah,
you
Knockout was not. It was a MVC style or MVVM, some people would say, but to me it's the same thing. It's like you got a big controller and that would control multiple, like a big giant template of code instead of breaking that template into components that are then reused everywhere. And
but
Knockout 3 did add components, but like let's not get into that discussion. So,
but more so what I was trying to get at is that in Knockout it was like Solid here. Like when you updated the one little thing, it
uh-huh.
would just go and update that one little thing. Since then, Vue, when you update the one little thing, it just goes and recreates the whole component again.
Yeah, React is the same way, right? So it'll
Exactly.
re-render the
And
entire component, which can have major performance implications if you're not using hook smart.
right. Vue has done a lot of optimization now in Vue 3 so that it can separate the static and dynamic parts, but it's still like it's the setup functions like the top half of my function here.
Uh-huh.
And then it still runs through parts of the JSX. Like it treats the JSX part as a whole, or their template part as like a whole template that runs. They just have optimized it quite a bit further to reduce it, but
Mm.
it still conceptually reruns. And even Svelte, surprisingly to a lot of people, still reruns at a component level. They just get rid of the subscriptions. They compile it in. If you ever reverse engineer Svelte, what you'll see is like instead of having where my write function goes execute a bunch of subscriptions, Svelte just compiles in update component.
I see. I see. I didn't know that. Okay. And so
There-
Spell's like super fast from when I used it, even comparing to React. So the way they compiled it in must have been like extremely efficient. So I'm
yes.
curious how then how Solid would fare in comparison because I have something called so I got it from somebody else who then got it from somebody else. But it's called 10,000 processes and it's basically where each component is a separate process that is running its own code that is listening and then updating randomly essentially these numbers on the screen. And I do that when I like my kind of stream background now. I've kind of taken ownership of my own version of it, and I built it in React. I built it with Redux. I built it with a lot of technologies. Without
That's
confirm mode, React can't even do more than 1,000 components, and it doesn't seem like much, but it's a lot for me. Like that, it can't do that. And then Svelte was like able to do 25K like easy, and
yeah.
that's basic Svelte. I actually even copied over the same kind of concepts that I use in React. So I'm actually curious if this is doing even less work than Svelte. Most likely, it would be even more
Yeah.
performant. I'm curious how it works with memory because you're storing all these subscriptions and stuff, but you're gonna do that anyway. Like they're stored in memory anyway. So we're just adding references to functions in
That
memory.
that's
Yeah.
the whole thing. I mean, this is more of like a framework writer kind of perspective, but the difference between the different approaches and like memory and memorization just
Mhm.
comes down to like in an event system. you're basically like a reactive system. You're basically storing the value with the event emitter. So with the computation, you basically have this cache, and you have that memory. But with a top-down system, if you want to optimize running it over again, you memoize, and it's the same idea. You just go, oh, I don't need to do this work again. You call a function, and it realizes that its arguments haven't changed, so it doesn't do the work again and just returns the same value, right? You like a memo. They're kind of the same thing. That's why I called my computation or whatever create memo, because for my purposes, even though that's a reactive thing that updates, when you look at the whole tree, it's just a memo.
Yeah.
And that's
can I see the create memo again real quick? So when you're calling create memo, you're returning a value, but you're
function again.
Let's take a look. I want to see.
Do you want this one, or should we make?
Yeah, this one's fine. Okay, so it does make a new value. So I like the fact that you made this very similar to React. The reason I like that, because it's easy to transition, it's easy to teach people, and it's easy to understand the concepts. Because it looks like React, you would also know the rules of hooks and things like that you would do, and you would follow those standards. It's probably easier to write ESLint rules and things like that. And so because of that, it honestly makes it. I honestly wish React was like this, because React could have done something like this. Now that I think about it, with the function components. I feel like they could have done this when they added hooks without having to do that second arg. It would have been completely different, and this would have been like fundamentally different. I really like what you've done here. I think this is pretty fantastic, and you got the right concepts. Anything that takes from Knockout, I like personally, because
biggest influence, honestly.
Yeah, because I think they did a lot of things right in Knockout that for performance reasons, in terms of the observable patterns and how they're updating state. And so like the fact that you're doing that to me is a very appealing. I'm curious how far you can take this, because I noticed your example in your article did not have any return statement of HTML. So I'm assuming is there a, when you're creating custom hooks or custom create functions here, how are those? Okay, let's get to that. When you're creating custom create functions, like how's that look compared to creating like a custom component? Is a custom component somehow mixed in with that?
Yeah, as I say, components are just functions. I just follow the same conventions people have been using for React. It's funny, I keep on saying that. We've been doing this, from like before React ever introduced hooks. But like, if you wanted to, like, are you talking about like usually when you make a custom hook, sorry, it's like doubler. Let's call it doubler. Like you might do something like let's see, what do we want to do? We're going to take a source, and this is like really trivial thing, right?
We're going to multiply by 2, I'm assuming. Oh, yeah, you're talking about how we would do this in Solid.
Yeah, but I mean, it's, you know what I mean? Like,
oh, I see. So this is the way that you would perceive essentially a custom hook to look like.
Yeah, so
are you creating a doubler though? Like when you put create in front of it to keep that nomenclature? Is that not something we want? Okay.
Yeah, let's. You're right. That's a good convention.
Yeah.
Let's do that. Const. Create const.
Okay, so far double, same as I would expect it.
Equals create doubler. Doubler.
And then we need to use that value. Can we use it down in the button text?
Yeah, let's just make this double. And I am broken because I haven't imported create memo. Okay, create memo, right?
Okay, so it is doubling. And so what are we doing? So we're taking the count that we had, we're passing it in as a value into this create memo function so that it can call it. That's important, right?
As a signal, yes.
Yeah, as a signal. Okay, so we're not passing. We never pass the function return value itself, because I suppose we can if we wanted to, but you'd only get it once. The way you get the updating to work is that you call you pass the function itself so that you can call it in your memo function. In this case, your custom signal, is that what we call it?
Yeah.
Okay. In your custom signal.
Yeah.
Okay. In your custom signal, you would pass the function itself, not the value of the function that you called. Okay. And so if you called count here, just to be 100% sure, if you called count and you passed it in create doubler, you would get 2, and you would just keep getting 2. And in fact, nothing would change.
Well, yeah, the problem is it wouldn't be a function here, an error right here.
Yeah, let's not call that as a function. I just want to see what happens, and just to show people. So
Yeah,
I'm assuming you just keep getting 2, and this is obviously not what you want.
0, 0, yeah,
0.
0.
Oh, because it never
Zero in the
0
beginning.
multiplied by 0. Oh, why did it
It's
work
0
before?
times 2. It was 0 times 2.
Wait,
We're
hang
just
on. Set that
if
to
I,
1. Yeah.
yeah, it'll be 2.
Okay, so then we just get 2 continuously,
Yeah.
which is the expected behavior. Okay, this is very easy to learn from somebody that knows React. To in my opinion, it's working the way I would expect it to work. I know there's a little bit of like, okay, maybe to pass the function itself, not the value of the function. I remember we had like KO observable and knockout, and sometimes somebody would accidentally do KO observable equals and like redo the function or something. It's that they would. It's not that, but they would basically modify the function itself and not the value. But that's with
Yeah.
mutations. In React, we have this idea of we don't mutate the values and we just call the setter functions.
I
And
did
so,
this separate on purpose. That part of knockout was so confusing, like
uh-huh.
whether you're calling the setter or not calling the setter.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
I also like unidirectional flow. Knockout was two-way binding. We're not that big on two-way binding here. So like I think there's a lot to learn from React in terms of patterns, and that I think the chaos, like the reason people discounted reactivity back in knockout was because it was chaotic. But
Hmm. Hmm.
you can solve the chaos by following patterns, and that's what React did. They said this is the way, immutable data sources. Like they basically established those kind of patterns, unidirectional flow, and that's what made our apps easier to reason about. That's what I wanted to bring into Solid, into reactivity. Like I know Vue and Svelte have different opinions here, right? And that's fine. But for me, when you get to those complicated apps, there's a reason why React works so well. It's
Hmm.
not
Hmm.
because reactivity is bad. It's because willy-nilly mutations all over the place can be dangerous. You got to establish good patterns. You know,
Yeah, I like the way you've done this. I had no clue what I was getting into when we were going to talk about this. I was like, okay, this might be pretty cool. It's getting some traction. Let's check it out, right? And then I had no clue that I was going to see something that looked like React but had a significantly cleaner API. This is what I wish React was now. Like I'm wishing today that tomorrow I could just use this in my code. It's not that easy. It wouldn't be that like immediately possible.
yeah.
But this is what I wish hooks were because you've
The
got like
biggest
all the right things. It's like React, but the reactive React instead of re-render the entire component every time it changes and let the virtual DOM figure out what it's going to do. I mean that virtual DOM diff, I've even run into performance problems with it because you're doing too many diffs on too big. If your components are bigger, the diff takes too long. This doesn't even a virtual DOM diff. I'm assuming.
No, I mean the diffing in Solid and in terms of the rendering, there's a one in the list handling. It is in theory, it is possible to do one-to-one updates for lists, but it gets a lot more complicated when you want to batch updates and do multiple
Mm.
changes. So we do a shallow diff on arrays. So and every framework does that. Svelte does it. Everyone does it.
On
It just
arrays that have been passed into create signal.
no on arrays that get passed into like
Oh, because yeah, because you're seeing which components to because there could be components coming out of that array, and you want to see how to you don't know which components belong in that spot, and so you need to check them every single time. That's why you're doing a shallow diff. You need to check them to see if the component that is being rendered is different from the last time it was rendered. Typically, if you're just rendering components out, you know what they are because you've created the elements. But here, the elements are dynamically created, so you have to do that check every time.
yeah. Well,
If you
basically
have a map statement there that people are familiar
yeah.
with, yeah.
Yeah, so basically with Solid, what your component returning, I mean, I don't know if I highlighted this nearly enough, but let's do. Can I do this? Let's just do this. Const b equals. Let's just do
Hmm.
this,
Hmm.
and let's return v in the end.
Okay. Yeah.
Do
What are we doing?
can you guess what b is here? Can you take a guess what we're going to end up here when I console log v?
It's going to be the return function in the thing that was returned in your when you call counter in and it translates it. It's going to be the return part of it.
This is annoying. Let's see if I can see it in the console. You don't know why this is annoying? Yeah,
Oh
it's
yeah.
because
Oh, it's the element itself. What?
yes,
Oh, that's because you did the L. You did the temp thing and then $L in the
yeah,
code output. Let's take a look at that real quick just to show people so they can see
yeah.
it.
Well,
Yeah, you did. You actually cloned the node itself, the actual HTML. You're creating a clone of that HTML in a document object, and then you are returning that document object and that's what B is. Dude, that's awesome. That's like regular HTML now, like legit HTML.
These are the actual DOM nodes. The
Oh my
JSX is
gosh.
the actual DOM nodes. Yes.
Now you don't need refs for this. You have built-in refs.
Yeah, I mean, there is an advantage to refs in that, and I'm going to go back up a bit. What if your stuff's nested? What if you want to deal with
Yeah,
it
nested. You
in
need
your own
access
thing?
to the inner piece, but you
Like
don't
so,
need refs from that standpoint. Like you only need refs if it's nested. But if you always do refs, then you have at least a consistent API for how you're going to write.
I do suggest people use refs just
Is it
simply
create
from the
rect?
fact that I don't have it on here. Let's just it's CreateEffect or it's on mount. I did just on mount and CreateEffect are the same thing except one doesn't track. But
Okay.
let's say CreateEffect. I just there's nothing new here.
So this is a mutation, just like in React, it would be a mutation to create a ref. Behind the scenes, they're doing the mutation.
I think you're going to actually like what this is doing. It's actually really funny in the compiler. See this ref B? Let's keep track of this. Look,
We haven't mutated it.
Yeah, ref is our variable. Where is it? But B is our variable, right? So what I do is I get B. I need to check in case it's a function. I support function callback refs too. But basically, if it's a function, call it with the element. Otherwise, assign it.
Okay, so it's important to put the let then in front of it. If you put a const there, it's going to break.
Yes, because. Okay. But it's just a variable here. Basically, Solid doesn't have use callback, doesn't have use ref, doesn't think about it. Use ref, DOM refs are one place where this is really important. But React sometimes has to use ref to maintain things that are not state between renders so that you can access them. I don't know if you've ever gotten into those scenarios. Those are some of the most...
I do it all the time. I actually use ref to maintain state where I don't want to update the component on a render. I do it consistently in my form library.
Right. So the difference here is because Solid only renders once, like there's no need for that whole concept.
You're blowing my mind here. Okay. Let me think for a minute here. Let's make this into a ref. So instead of let's put const there and put b.current.
Okay,
right?
Sure, yeah.
Make be an object with a current of undefined.
Actually,
And so we can make this into a React ref. We can actually create ref function just like React has.
Why don't you let's just do this?
Yeah, b.current right there. Yeah, and that's going to do what I expect. Yes, that's it. This is what I would expect to have happen. Yeah, and it's very clear now that the ref is the current value of b, and then now you can, when you're logging, you're not logging b. You're going to log b.current to get the ref of it.
TypeScript hates this.
Okay, well, yeah, normal JS wouldn't do that, but yeah.
Okay. I mean, what do I do?
You can put current in there, a prop of current.
Current question mark.
Oh, you have to do the type. I see.
Yeah, and what is it? A HTML button element.
Oh my gosh, you got to go that far? Okay.
Well, I mean, you could put any. I mean, this is TypeScript.
Yeah, it doesn't. I guess it doesn't know at this point what it is.
Yeah, I mean, this is TypeScript. But yeah, I mean, if I'm
so you can make it just like a React ref. So I'm wondering, like, if I wanted to convert apps from React to this, it would be pretty straightforward if they were hooks. If they had class components, you got a whole nother ball. If they had hooks, you could create component by component and then render a solid component into a React component. It's possible, right?
Yeah, I have a demo of doing that. There's some problems. Props children, like we can't cross the divide very easily.
Yeah.
Solid doesn't understand React's VDOM nodes, and this one's probably a little funny to people. React doesn't understand real DOM nodes.
yeah, because it has the synthetic stuff or whatever.
I don't think there's any. I mean, someone's going to correct me and they see the video or whatever, but I don't think there's actually any way it's like to go like here DOM node inserted into the ReactVDOM.
Oh, the only way I know to do it is if you, in the return statement of a component, if you do document.query element and you query the element that was rendered already by Solid, then React can own it, and as long as that component is memoized, it will never update, and you won't have to worry about it removing your code.
Right. But the tricky part is if the React is responsible for inserting the children itself, like it would be in this position. I'm picturing calling a React component from inside Solid. And trying to pass the children, React would be responsible for inserting the children. It wouldn't know how to do it. Yes, and this kind of touches on the React compat. It is a challenge. There's web components and stuff that can sometimes bridge that gap. But realistically, you'd kind of focus on a tree, like the side of the tree, like maybe as I mentioned, take your React app, convert part of it to Solid. and
That's what I'm
with
thinking. Yeah, yeah.
no props children involved or anything, like just like a clear isolated stuff. Maybe it's one page, and then just do it. If you're curious, actually, I have my dashboard here. I was playing with this exact same thing. Was it yesterday or the day before? What was it? React Solid Hawk. One of them is I called Solidify, and one of them was Reactify. Yeah, this
So
one
this
is
is
solid. This. Oh, yeah. This is. Oh God, this is really old. Anyways, this is solid inside a React app, more or less, right?
yeah. So create element. That's a React create element. Yeah, that's a React
Yeah,
create element. So this is what JSX is doing behind the scenes,
yeah.
and you're getting a ref and you're passing it to the yeah. But component wrapped props. That component is from where's that
Yeah.
component coming from?
The component's what you
Oh, there it
pass
is.
in.
It's being passed in. Okay.
It's a solid component being passed in that returns a React component.
So this is the yeah bridge. So it's possible to make Solid and React somewhat compatible with each other. It's obviously not ideal, but if you do it from a branch of a tree and the whole
Yeah,
branch is Solid or React, that then they can be cross compatible in ways. Because I'm wondering today if I like wanted to, and I'm not gonna do it today, but if today I wanted to convert all of the apps to from React to Solid, what I would have to do is I would have to have some kind of thing like this to be able to have them communicate. And the main benefit there is that then I can have a way to use React components from other libraries that there are like billions of these things now. And then I can use those in my application if I needed something special that I didn't want to write myself. And
yeah,
that way I can use a React component. So they're mostly it seems like there is a way to make them compatible. It's probably the way you would make them compatible with any other library. But it looks like
yeah.
they're because of JSX, you have a little bit more flexibility here because you can literally call the solid component, or in the other case, you can reactDOM.render into your solid component if you wanted to.
Yeah, yeah. Basically, I mean, it's basically the APIs are so similar. Like this is the React and this is the Solid and React. And if I go back here, where is it? This is the opposite direction, which is now you see a
Okay,
solid
so this is a
component.
solid, yeah, CreateEffect. I actually understand this more now, just from right now. Okay, so object values props, and then untrack.
Okay,
Untrack, you were saying there was okay. I won't go into that, but it's a callback there. It returns a function that calls render. Yeah, render is the React DOM render. Yes,
yeah,
and then create element is just JSX, and
yeah,
then and we're creating a React element from the component that we were given, and we're rendering that into the element that
yeah,
is the ref. Okay, there's the ref, and that's your root node for React. Yeah,
yeah.
this is what I would expect to see because I understand this way at the moment.
Yeah,
So yeah.
the reason, and this is might be the hardest part. If someone could solve this, they would have the ticket.
Mm-hmm,
Both
mm-hmm.
libraries need different JSX transformations. So for something in Code Sandbox, it's like impossible for me to, I think, to configure it to.
Oh, that's why you're doing create element is because you can't put two
Yes, it,
GSX. Oh, because the pragmas and stuff. Oh, so this is
yeah,
like more of a Babel issue than anybody else's issue at that point.
yeah, yeah. Like well, you could set up your project, and there's JSX import types, and there's ways to say like this one's React and this one's Solid. It
Oh my
just like
god.
in Code Sandbox, I don't know. It'd be very easy for me to set that up.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
But you can
this is fantastic though. All the work you've done here is amazing. All the stuff you've put together. This is like the right way to do hooks. I knew there was a way to do it, and I just had no clue myself, like how I would. I was coming up with ideas. I was like maybe use some kind of observable or something. I was like I don't understand. Like I was thinking like the way RxJS works with the pipeline and stuff. But you figured out a way to do it in the way that matches API's hooks API, which. But then you've like taken it to the next level and made it significantly simpler, more performance there, because it's not updating things unnecessarily. You don't have to worry about a VDOM diff. You like you said, you do have to if you get an array in, you have to like figure that out. But everybody does that. So yeah, I
go.
mean, this is just all the right stuff. I'm
I mean, there's
definitely
only one
impressed.
thing I wanted to kind of say
Yeah,
because
yeah.
this is all the positive. I just want there's one last difference that will throw people off a little bit from React, and it is around that array thing, right? Because we can do your typical like I mean double bigger than 5 high low. We can do all your typical JSX kind of stuff. You know, let me get the results. Yeah, you know what I mean.
Uh huh.
Like we can handle all your ternary operators and all conditional lands and inserts, and
Tell
we
me
can do it
what doesn't
actually.
work.
We can do this in a really effective way. Well, is what I was getting at you is the map. The map is just calling array.map.
Mhm.
I'm going to clean this up for a second.
That's fine. Yeah, yeah.
I think this is an important point, just so that people get the last little bit here. But let's make our signal now. See, okay. And instead of doing this, I'm going to use the functional form. I'm going to keep a count for now just because I'm lazy, but let's just go like, whatever. It's going to keep on appending
Okay,
these.
okay, great. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right, like
It'll keep adding the DDs. Yeah.
yeah. Okay, right.
Let's say we want to render a component that shows like a span or something that shows every single one of those.
So I mean, this works because we're just like inserting the array pretty dumbly, and maybe this isn't. Maybe I should have been using richer data for this. But my point is, as you can imagine, let's do something a little bit more. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take count. I'm going to map it.
Yeah, that's what I'm, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so let's go item, and I'm going to put in div. God, I'm terrible. Let's just do div. I can't put this inside button, so we're going to make button also a div. This is div soup.
Oh, because okay, it's an HTML thing. That's fine.
I mean, I could also, you know what? Screw this. Let's just pull this out. You know, let's just pull.
Oh, we don't need a button.
Well, we do
to show the incrementing. I see.
So I'm going to make this back into a button. Sorry.
Well, I don't mind it being in the same file. That would be fine for me to see it. But you're saying you could.
I'm going to keep it in the same file. I'm just going to make a fragment.
Fragment. Here. Okay, so you support fragments. Yeah, I was about to ask that.
Yeah. So and then I'm just going to go. You know, let's go div.
Can you import fragment from Solid.js?
No, it's a compiled thing. It just turns into an array.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So and let's just go. What is it? Item. Okay, and then boom, boom. Okay, now this, I'm gonna have to open up the console to show exactly what I'm trying to show here. But this, you have to remember that Solid returns a DOM element. Let me see if I can inspect and get nice and close in here. See, watch what happens when I click the button. See how it's re-rendering?
Oh, everything. Oh, that sucks.
Because it's a map function.
Yeah.
Well, what does map do?
So you're not like, we don't have access to the refs though. If we had access to the refs, we can put them back in there, right? And return.
Right. Well, what I'm getting at is classic map function takes data, maps it to thing, and we're returning real divs. So we're recreating the whole list the whole time. This is not good. This is very bad, in fact, for performance. So what we do in Solid is technically I have something called map array or something, which is a special map function, right? Right. So then suddenly we're like map array,
and you put count, and then you put your function in there.
Yeah, and then we're happy.
Yeah, not ideal, but still better than not having a solution.
Right. So then you're like, okay, now it's only the last one getting added. See?
The question I have is is it possible to in the compile time put that map array in there for you?
Here's no, because people can do whatever they want with JavaScript. Like I can't count for like someone importing something, running it.
Oh, you're totally right. Okay, so you've created a component to help with this, which is better than using a function because it's actually more clear. You're using the component composition to do it for you. Yeah, I like that. That makes a lot of sense to me.
So that's it, right? And I just wanted to point this out because it's just what am I missing? Is that I have an extra? It is. You know, JSX works. It just from map arrays specifically. We and TypeScript.
Yeah, React cheats it by basically not having they rerun the whole component, so it's not an issue at that point.
Right.
Yeah, so they do a VDOM diff and they're able to tell that. You don't have the ability to do a VDOM diff here. So what you're doing is you're having some way to essentially try to control the output yourself.
Yeah. So basically, if you've used Vue or Svelte or anything, like this is not a big deal. This is just your typical V4 or hashtag each operator. For React people, this is a bit of a, they're like, well, I
Mm-hmm.
like my map function. But here's the thing I present to you. What's really awesome about viewing this is, how hooks let you just create your own custom hooks and you keep the same pattern and you go, oh, now I've got create double signal or local state or whatever.
Uh-huh.
Use local state and you can just compose. Components do that for you on the Vue side already in React, and people in React enjoy this all the time, right? Because if it's not for, it can be paginated. Like people love that aspect about React, and I've embraced the components for control flow, even for like conditionals. I have a show component because sure, it's a function. You have to be aware, but it's a component. But you just make your own components, right? There's no ceremony about it. You don't like if you're going from a list component to a paginated list or a virtualized list component, it's the same syntax. You just build a component. If you don't like my for loop, write your own. Like if you don't like what it's doing,
Oh yeah, so I can build the for loop right now. So it's a component, it's a function, and then in the return statement, it's going to call map array around the prop that you passed in the each prop, and it's going to call that as a function, and then it's going to
yeah,
put in the second arg the children of
yeah,
the for, and that's it. I just wrote it right.
yeah,
Yeah.
pretty much.
Okay.
I mean,
Okay. So
that'd be
you're
the
saying
naive
that because
version,
of map
but
array, anybody can build
yeah.
this.
Yeah, that's the naive version. If you use my map array function, you would basically build the for function. In fact, if I pulled up the code, you'll see that the for function is literally just calling map array.
Okay.
Like
Yeah, that's what I expected. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
so,
Okay.
this is
Okay.
this is kind of what I'm getting at, and I think this is powerful because I honestly, if I know you're a React audience, but for people who work in Vue and Svelte, try and do that. You can't use the same syntax. It's just like Svelte's $ operator. Once you try and make a custom hook, you have to use stores. Like
Hmm.
you can't use the dollars. You can't extend the $ operator. You can't extend the each control flow or the V4. I mean, you can make custom bindings in Vue, so you can kind of doing it, but this is just a component.
Hmm. Yeah, it's just a component, and then that component can render an output of as one or as many items as it wants.
Yeah.
And you already have code in there to accept an array output from the code. So it would if you logged that for statement, you would get an array of div elements.
More or less. It's dynamic. So you get a function that returns an array of div elements,
Uh-huh.
right? It'd be a signal
So it's
essentially.
different from the button because it's not an HTML element; it is a component, and
Well,
components return
it
functions.
depends on the component, right? If my component returns is dynamic and returns a memo, then
Oh, I see.
returns a memo. If it returns a div element, the reason that this component would have to return a memo is because it can change. Like if it never changed, and most components never change their output, then you'd just be returning a div, so to speak. So or the button or the element. So
So this is
basically,
really map array is really create map at that point. It's a signal. You're saying.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay. That was a little confusing, but now I get it. So it's not just a function. It's actually a creator function, just like all the other ones.
Yeah,
And
yeah, and maybe my naming should be more
it's
consistent.
fine. It's fine. That's what I do all the time. So yeah. So I'd love to ask you about context and some other things, but we're obviously running out of time here. So I really appreciate your time. If you want to say any last words, man, I appreciate it. This is a great thing to see. It's so to me, it's like so innovative. This is one of the coolest things I've seen by far this year. This blew my mind.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. I'll stop sharing so I can actually see your face for a
Yeah,
minute
yeah,
here.
yeah.
But yeah, no, yeah, I've enjoyed people coming in and getting to check it out for the first time. I've been working on this for a very, very, very long time. I found the first official commit, the other day in a private repo from August 21st, 2016.
Oh wow, yeah, that's been a long time, dude. That's before
I
hooks.
started the second React came out. I was like, I don't know about this. I love Knockout, and I
Yeah, it's
basically
using knockout too. That's funny. That's funny. Yeah.
and the second I learned to love React over time, which is why I have such strong opinions on this stuff. I really came around to see their way of thinking, but ever since React basically killed that whole reactive thing, I've been trying to make the reactive framework that I felt best could continue the legacy of what Knockout did.
Yeah, yeah. That's crazy. That's crazy. So that you were able to build essentially, yeah. So I didn't just see the assemblance to Knockout. It was built in from the start. That's where you were coming from. That's where, yeah. Because I also came from Knockout in 2015 into React, and I missed some of the enhancements it made. When I got to hooks, I was like, this is kind of similar, but it's like way more work for me to do. And I was like, Svelte kind of is like Knockout, but it was like the syntax is different. I don't like the dollar each and the proprietary HTML. I was like, I need something a little bit different. I mean, this is it to me. This is the transition that I need, so that if I was using a React app, I could teach people this tomorrow and they could learn it and it'd be easy, and then you can start building apps with it. Obviously, there's probably some more things to learn. There's context and a bunch of other stuff, but it's similar enough to where it's a very easy transition point. I think you did all of that right. Like, it's very, very well done.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
a lot of hard work, but I'm so stoked that people are trying it out, using it,
Yeah.
giving it a look.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Thanks so much for your time, Ryan.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye.